Hi, everybody. I see some familiar faces. Some of you have been with us all day for at least for 6 or so hours. So we're excited to have all of you back and welcome if this is your first webinar with us today. I'm Alyssa Sangster. I'm the CEO of Forté, and welcome to our Don't Quarantine Your Career series. Today, the webinar you're joining is called Schedule the Big Rocks, Don't Sort the Gravel. And Lena Renee from Franklin Covey, she's a VP of Consulting there, has joined us to be our presenter. Lena is a book author as well. She's written Leading Loyalty and The 5 Choices, and she's going to share some of her amazing expertise on focus and prioritization. So I'm going to hand it over to Lena, but we're excited that you've joined us, and let's kick this webinar off.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you. Okay, so it is lovely to see some familiar faces and some familiar names. If you were on either of the earlier ones, you kind of have a sense of the format. It's going to be very interactive. So I'm going to ask you to come off mute and to share your thoughts, and we're all going to be better for that. And if you are comfortable, I would love to see your faces. It's just, for me, really the highlight of these sessions is the connectivity that we have. So if you're comfortable, thank you, Liza, coming off or onto camera, that'll be great. Okay, so let's dive in. Again, we'll be doing all kinds of fun interactivity. We'll do breakout sessions. We'll be asking you to engage. Oh, thank you. The camera's really so lovely for me, so thank you. I am going to ask you, if you'll click at the bottom of your screen, there's one button called Participants, right? If you got that, and it's going to pop up a window. And in that window, will you click, if you came to an earlier session, will you click the raise hand if you were in either of the earlier sessions? Okay, our thumbs up is perfect as well. Okay, very good. Thanks for joining again. It looks like there were a good number of you that were here previously, at least in one or the other. So thank you for that. I just wanted to get a sense so that I know as we do a little bit of context, how much to repeat or not repeat. Okay, I'll go ahead and clear everyone's icons. You're welcome to use those. If you have any questions or you want me to pause, go ahead and just raise your hand like that. And I'll keep an eye out for those as well. Okay, so as mentioned, I have this particular passion around the topic of productivity and how we can get to extraordinary contribution in our lives. And so that's what the 5 Choices book is about. That's where we started our kind of search for the path to productivity. And in this book, we talk about 5 choices that you can make. And when you make these 5 choices, you will be ensured that you achieve these extraordinary outcomes and these extraordinary productivity. And of course, the hard part is that you have to make those choices, right? It's not quite so simple as just saying it. We are in this session diving right into this 3rd choice, which is schedule the big rocks, don't sort gravel. And I want to give you a little context for what came before that. So some of you have seen these other sessions. Bear with us as we spend just a few minutes reviewing what we covered in choice 1 and choice 2, which will be really important context for choice 3. So in choice 1, which is act on the important, don't react to the urgent, we actually spent time talking about the brain science of choice and the brain science around reacting and getting stuck in this more reactive part of your brain versus making a decision about where you spend your time. And you know, this kind of course, the brain is more complex than this picture. But as you look at this picture with the 2 parts of your brain, that reactive part of our brain, which is sometimes called the lizard brain, right? That's the part of your brain that is really concerned with fight or flight. It's looking for reward and avoiding any pain. We all know well, there's that, and then that part of your brain, the basal ganglia, the amygdala, also houses deeply rooted habits. So if you have a habit of waking up and picking up your phone and scrolling through your email, you're not making a decision about where you spend your time. That's a habit. We all know this part of our brain when we drive home from school or from work in the morning or in the afternoon, and we pull up into our driveway and we think, I don't remember a minute of that commute. right? Because driving is part of our deeply rooted habits. Now, our brain will take things that might be challenging that we do repeatedly, like driving when you're 16 years old, and tuck it into this more primitive part of your brain, because the thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, actually takes more energy to use. You burn more glucose when you're using that executive function of your brain. So to conserve energy, your brain wants to tuck everything into habit. But that is also why making new habits is challenging, and why when we start to engage in more important things and be more intentional, that can be challenging at first. So we did provide you with a tool called the Time Matrix. And the Time Matrix is a simple tool to help you pop into your prefrontal cortex and have a way to evaluate where you're spending your time. Now, for those of you who have the chat function, I'm going to send you a picture of this Time Matrix. You can spend time reviewing it later. The idea is that quadrant 2 gives you a much better return on your time than other quadrants. So how do you spend time in the things that are important but not urgent? Okay, so that was choice 1. I'll leave you with that tool. Then we went from choice 1, or actually this was our first session, was choice 2, which was all about the extraordinary and defining the potential that we have to contribute to our lives in an extraordinary way. In this choice, we talked about all of the roles that you might play in your life. And for those of you that weren't on this session, you can see certainly there are roles that aren't on this list that you would relate to, but plenty on this list that you would relate to as well. And in our lives, each of us plays dozens of roles, right? Yet some of those roles are just simply more important to us. There are some roles where I don't want to be ordinary, right? I don't want to be an ordinary leader. I don't want to be an ordinary parent. I don't want to be an ordinary student, right? So there are some roles where you think, no, that role I want to be extraordinary in. And we call those our Q2 roles. Whether you were with us earlier or not, can I have you take a moment in the chat and type in one of the roles that you know is one of your most important roles, right? What's a Q2 role in your life? I'm going to put mine. I'm a mother to twin daughters, so that's one of mine. Chloe, I love the connector role. That's a brilliant one. Thank you. Friend, leader. Mosey, that great friend, that good friend is wonderful. Learner. Fantastic. Thank you for these. So you can see there are some roles that just in your gut matter more to you, where you want to be extraordinary, where it doesn't feel right to settle for ordinary. We created what we call a life wheel, where we identified 5 to 7 of these roles in choice 2. And then from there, we started talking about what does it mean to be extraordinary in these, right? What does it look like to be an extraordinary mother or leader or friend versus an ordinary one? And we actually did use a tool, and I'm going to send this one over to you as well, that talks you through how you can really outline what extraordinary means. And I sent that in the chat, but again, that's for you to use on your own time. Just as a tool, it has you answer a series of questions about each role, and then helps you create what we call a Q2 role statement. So again, the idea behind choice 2 really is, how do you define what it means to be extraordinary in your life? If you can do that, and you have this ability to discern where to spend moment to moment, you are really well geared up to move into our next choice, choice 3. Now, choice 3, which is schedule the big rocks, don't sort gravel. I have some particular passion around this one for 2 reasons, and I'll be interested to hear from you if it resonates this way as well. The first reason is that this is the most tactical choice in my mind, meaning, oh, you want to know how to schedule your big rocks? Okay, there's 3 steps. They go like this, 1, 2, 3. And the most pragmatic, practical side of me, I just like that. Like, just tell me what to do. I just want to do it, right? So choice 3 has that going for it. The other reason I have this special love for choice 3 is that it is after 7 years of doing my very best to live this, it is my hardest one. It's still the one that I struggle with the most. And because of that, I can absolutely tell the times in my life when I'm making choice 3 versus the times when I'm not. Like there's a tangible difference in my life. So I have all this passion around it because I know how much impact it can have. We are going to watch a video that illustrates, I know some of you know this big rocks versus gravel idea, but we're going to watch a video that's kind of a fun illustration of that. I forgot to click the share sound, so let me do that again. And it should just play without any trouble for you. If you have trouble with the sound, at the bottom next to your mute button, the up arrow will let you pick a different speaker if you're having trouble hearing, but we haven't had much trouble with it. So, okay, here we go. It's about a four-minute video if you want to stand up or stretch or anything while it's playing. Sorry, one last thing. I'm going to stop my video because I think it will stream a little better if my video's off. So.
Hello, my name is Aidan O'Neill with Franklin Covey. We're here today in sunny London, home of the schedule, clocks with first names, Greenwich Mean Time. And this thing, we thought if anybody could prioritise their time, it would definitely be the Londoners. Let's go find out. Excuse me. David, good to see you. All of that. You're a dancer?
I'm a butcher by trade.
I have a number of people working for me.
Can you show us any dance moves? Lovely, lovely, lovely.
I got a couple of sons, a couple of ex-wives.
Do you feel like there's enough hours in the day to...
No, generally not. Generally not, actually.
Feel your pain?
I get up about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Rush about getting ready to get out the door in time,
Yeah.
get in the car, hope there's not just too much traffic about.
There's a lot to be done in all the few hours in the day.
Absolutely.
Right, which moves us swiftly on to our task. This is your life right here. This is you. Can you see the resemblance? Over here, this represents the unimportant things in your life, the things that you have to do. They're quite urgent and you have to do them. When you get to work, what do you do?
Emails.
There's one email.
Laundry.
The laundry has to be
ironing.
done. The ironing. Can you hear that? Is that the phone ringing? It's your ex-wife's mother-in-law. Oh, lovely.
Oh, you put loads in there.
Loads in there.
I think that's probably about right for me.
Is there enough rubbish in my
No,
life?
you gotta keep going. So how do you feel about half your life being taken up by these unimportant tasks?
I'm a bit frustrated at times.
But over here, these are all the good things in your life, the really important, great opportunities and family, you know, goals and things like that. Do you want these things in your life?
Most definitely.
So your task is, you've got to get these rocks into this bowl, which is your life. But you're not allowed to go over this level. And if you can do that challenge, I'm going to give you a nice crisp £50 note. Oh! What would you like to choose to put in first?
To put in first, family.
Family.
You've got a lot of that, haven't you? Everybody's going for family. Friends, looking at key relationships. Oh, it's not that you're burying your 2 ex-wives then there.
No.
Business opportunity.
That's a big rock.
That's a very big rock, actually.
He's going straight for the holiday and vacation. Customer relationships are so important to you.
They are indeed.
Exercise.
Let me see them stomach muscles. Rock hard, like a stone, like that. What about that big pink one? What does that say?
Customer relationship. Exciting new projects. That always keeps me motivated and happy.
What about the brown one at the end there?
Not quite. Need to get rid of some of the stuff I don't need to do.
You're getting really into this, aren't you, Bob?
The stuff I put in first, like the spiritual stuff and the family and the love, is the kind of it's the important stuff, really.
Probably get rid of exercise.
Who needs pert bums? Do you do community service in Clapham?
No.
Just gonna put that one on. Love is left out.
Oh, that never works for me.
It doesn't work for you.
If it happens, it happens.
You can reorganize it. You gotta make room. You need love in your life. You're going a little over the line there, my man.
You find that you can't squeeze everything in.
There's too much of disgruntled life getting in the way.
It will be good to get rid of some of this so that we can put some of this in.
And then pour the green life on top of it. Let it fill in all the little nooks and crannies so my priorities are what I want in life.
Do you want to try that?
Yeah?
Okay.
Why didn't you tell me you had this?
I didn't know it was down there. You're taking a new angle on this, aren't you?
I am.
I'm feeling good. Are you feeling good?
Yeah.
Exciting new project.
Get it in there. I'm happy. It's good.
You still need the emails and the phone calls. You still need them.
You really
because
need
they,
them?
Yes, because the emails, unless they're spam, you don't need spam.
There we go.
Nah, you want some more than that.
See, look, they're fitting around the other things.
Are you going to leave out some of the mundane things?
Definitely.
You going to leave some out there?
Yeah.
Is that a stand you're taking and you're going to stand by that?
I am, yes. I'm happy and confident with that.
Well, you're a rich man now. You've got yourself £50. Yes! What are you going to do with your 50 quid?
Get a haircut.
Is there a moral to our story?
I've learned that I need to sit back and re-examine my life and put my priorities in the right order.
You can fit things into a day or a bowl if you really need to.
You can fit things into a day or a bowl if you really need to. There you have it, people. Do the important things first, and everything else just falls into place. Do you know, I've just thought of something important that I could do right now. Well, maybe it's just fun. Cheers!
Okay, this is not rocket science, right? This is a simple prioritization process, but this is the key to accomplishing your highest priorities, right? If that bowl is your week or it's your day, the things that matter most, the things that you have identified as being your top priorities have to be put in first. And everything else has to fall around it, because here's my experience, and you'll have to tell me if you have the same one. There is no end to the number of unimportant things you can do with your time. Right? I mean, there's no end. That bowl will fill up with green gravel and then spill over with green gravel and just keep going. So there's no end to the unimportant, which means you won't default into getting the important things done. Right? There's this illusion that I hear people say all the time, I'm going to catch up and then I'll get to those things that are important, right? Once I catch up, there's no caught up. That's what I'm learning. You're never going to be caught up to where you get the priorities done. The priorities have to be given your finest and your best attention first. So we can do this process of big rocks versus gravel through what we call weekly planning. Now, using your reactions at the bottom of your Zoom window, there's one called reactions. How many of you, by a show of thumbs up, how many of you already do some form of weekly planning, not daily, but weekly planning? Sit down and plan out your week. Thank you, Rocio, Kira, Jelaine. Okay, very good. Okay, some of you sit down and plan your actual week out. Thank you for that. If you're planning out your week in a way that works for you, I wouldn't recommend you change it. If it's working, don't change it. If it's not working the way you want, or if you're not someone that does weekly planning, I'm going to give a big pitch for weekly planning right now. So Stephen R. Covey is one of our co-founders. He wrote The 7 Habits, for sure has been a big influence in my life. He once said, if you were to ask me what single practice would do more to balance your life and increase your productivity than any other, it would be this. Plan your week each week before the week begins. And I just want to maybe double down on that message. That's a quote by him, but this is the practice that when I'm doing it, my life is very different from when I'm not doing it. So sitting down and thinking through proactively in your thoughtful brain, what goes in my bucket? What are the big rocks? So let's walk through the process. This is where step 1, step 2, step 3 come in. There are 3 steps to weekly planning as we teach it. 1, we say set aside half an hour. I think as you begin, that's a pretty good length of time. Set aside half an hour so you can be thoughtful and you can get away from the distractions and then get into your executive brain. The first step is to connect with your roles and goals. So if you were on our session about choice 2 with the life wheel, connecting with your roles and goals might be as simple as pulling out a picture of your life wheel. Right, and just remembering what are the roles that matter most to me in my life right now. It might be pulling out the document, and if you're just go back to the chat and scroll up a little bit, that document is still there, so you can download it from the chat. It might be that you've got one of these worksheets printed out for each of those 5 or 7 roles, and you read through them. This step 1, connecting with your roles and goals, takes, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you, takes no more than, I don't know, 3-4 minutes. And it's the one we're most likely to skip, because we say, oh yeah, I know what my roles and goals are. Why would this step be so important that we really have it as step 1? You always have to do it. Why? You can either come off mute and just share your thoughts, or you're welcome to chat. Why would we say connecting with your roles and goals has to be the first thing you do in planning?
I think we're, excuse me. I don't know if my mic's on. I think,
yeah, it is. Hi, Molly.
Hi. I think we're often in our habits mode when it comes to our roles of importance. So we're not actively engaging with them and what it means to do those things on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. Perfectly said. Perfectly said. It's this reactive brain, right? You just launch into the week the way you launch into any other week. We're not being thoughtful about it. I have a colleague, one of my just dearest colleagues, his name's Mike. Mike's been facilitating this content in some version for decades. And he, because before we had 5 choices, we still taught planning from all the way back to 7 Habits days. And he shared a story. I hope you will indulge me while I share his story for him. So Mike is this super friendly, boisterous, funny guy. And he was in, way back when people went to airports, he was in the airport. This was a few years ago, and he was in one of the lounges talking to a pilot. And this was the pilot that flies the Salt Lake City to Paris route. That was his route, and he did that route over and over and over again. And Mike's just a fun guy, kind of cheerful, sat down by the pilot and said, all right, hotshot, tell me what it takes to fly a plane. I mean, he just literally said that to him, but tell me, hotshot, what does it take to fly a plane? And the guy said to him, the pilot said, oh, it's just super easy, no problem, just kind of joking back. And then he said, actually, the equipment and the technology make flying a plane, it's complex, but it's not difficult. The hard part about flying a plane to Paris is not the takeoff or the landing, but it's steering the plane as we go. Because he said, if you get off, and we all know this analogy, if I'm off just a fraction of a degree as we get going to Paris, by the time we get to Paris, we're nowhere near Paris. And then he said, and it's not just Paris I'm going to. It's the Charles de Gaulle Airport, runway number 43B. There is no room for me to get off track. And I guess what I like about the analogy to planning is this. So many of us, we set our goals and we set our roles and we know exactly who we want to be, but then we put our heads down and we work and we work and we work and we work. And we never poke our heads back up to ask, are we still on our way to Paris? Right? And all of a sudden, you know, a year later, you're planning again and you think, wow, I'm not any closer to who I want to be because I've been so busy working. So that's for me the important part of this first step. Do not skip looking to make sure you're still on track for Paris. Are you with me on this? Yeah, so this is about ensuring that that vision of extraordinary that you've created for yourself is still the place you're going. And there might be times when you're looking at your roles or you're looking at your goals and you think, I need to make an adjustment. Right? Either a role needs to go onto my life wheel or come off of my life wheel, or one of the goals that I set for my nightclub bouncer, as we talked about in the earlier session, one of those goals isn't getting me where I thought it would, so I need to change it. And that's fine as well. But for the most part, you're just sitting down, reviewing who you want to be. Step 2, and this is where we're going to get into some work. Step 2 is where you schedule the big rocks. So scheduling the big rocks is that step in the video we saw where they said, okay, family, love, my exercise, community service. They're identifying the things that deserve a space in time with priority. And you can do this simply by asking the question, you know, what are the 1 or 2 most important things that I can do in this role this week? And you can see we've got a place for you to identify those, and we're going to spend a moment doing that. But note the verb on this step is schedule. It's not pick your big rocks. It's not write your big rocks down. What we know, Heidi Grant Halverson did an aggregation of hundreds of studies about what successful people do. And what she shows in her research is that you are 2 to 3 times more likely to do something if it's in your calendar versus on a task list. Success rates go from 32 to 96% when you are very clear about when and where it's going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking while we get into this exercise. Thanks, Amy. Amy shared those documents again, so they're in the chat. There's a little button that says download. If you go to your chat and open the chat, you can download those documents. Thanks, Amy. Okay, earlier I asked you to chat in one of the roles that you know is one of your most important roles. And you can pick either that role or another one, but I'm going to stop talking and give you a moment to write out, let's see, it's Wednesday today. So I'm going to say between now and Sunday. What are the 1 or 2 most important things that you could do between now and Sunday in that role? Let me give you about a minute and a half on your own. You don't need to chat it in to everyone, but you're welcome to if you want to. I was imagining you could just write it on a piece of paper. What are the 1 or 2 most important things? List those out. Okay, once you've got those listed, you're going to schedule them. So if you've got a calendar that's easily accessible, you're welcome to go to that calendar and actually put them in. If not, I want you to pick the exact time and write it down. Because remember, it's not pick your big rocks, it's schedule them. So you just identified 1 or 2 things between now and Sunday. You're going to have to identify when and put them in your calendar if you can. And if you had to open your email system to put it in your calendar, don't get stuck. Don't get stuck in your email if you had to open Outlook or Google to put it in there. You have just one more moment to schedule these on your calendar. Okay, we have a great question from Payal. She says, a quick question, how do you estimate the work that will flow in from your job in that week, right? Because you're planning within a week. So how do you estimate how much time you're going to need to reserve for work or for study? And then how do you manage it if things pop into that time, right? So something unexpected. So let me pause on those because I want to get through step 3 and then I would like your insight. So be thinking of an answer to those because you certainly have experience here as well. Once you've got your big rocks scheduled, that's when you organize the rest. So this is the step where you let all of the green gravel fall in over the big rocks that you put in your bucket. And it's not to say that the gravel is meaningless, right? If it's truly, truly meaningless, don't do it. Don't put it in your bucket. But many of these things we can say, look, I may not think that email is important, but I can't just delete every email I get, right? So there are plenty of things that you might consider gravel, you're still obligated to do or to act on. But what you're saying in this step is those gravel pieces, those obligations are less important, period. They're less important. The most important things are your big rocks. So let me pause there. I'm interested to hear, based on these steps, who has a thought for Payal's question around how do you estimate the work that comes in for that week? How could you accurately plan or select your big rocks if you don't know how much work you're going to be up against in the coming week? What are your thoughts? Please, Gabriela. You might have.
Yeah, so I think for me, most of the times you cannot anticipate, but you can force yourself to spend as less time as possible doing unexpected things. I have found very useful that sometimes I see something and I am like, okay, I'm not spending more than 30 minutes on this. And I schedule an alarm and I work very intense on it for 30 minutes. And then when the alarm sounds, I maybe don't feel super comfortable with the deliverable, but I assess how risky it is to send it as it is right now. And if I won't get fired, I just send it.
I love that. I like the caveat. If I won't get fired, and sometimes it really is just putting a parameter on it, right? So it's 30 minutes, and then I'm going to have the discipline to stop, right? Or to shift or to do something different. Thank you, Gabriela, for sharing. Other thoughts? What would you add? If you don't know what's coming at you next week, how do you plan for it?
I think just to add to Gabriela's point, I don't think you can schedule it all, like your calendar, back to back and pack it all up with all the things, because unexpected things will come up. So leaving a little bit of time, not a ton of leisure time, but a little bit of time for the unexpected things. And then to her point, kind of time boxing it to a certain amount of whatever, 30 minutes, 1 hour, and then moving on if it's sort of satisfactory for that time being.
Thank you. Really well said. I have a colleague who after her calendar gets about 60% full with meetings or other obligations, she starts filling in the other times with artificial calendar appointments, right? Because she knows if it's more than 60% full, it's likely that urgencies and emergencies, these last minute things are going to fill it in all the way, and then she doesn't have any time to work. Right? So I like that idea where you don't fill it all back to back. In fact, if you think about your life wheel in the context of this planning, there is one risk that comes right to mind. In fact, if I go back a few slides, in step 2, let's say you've got 7 roles on your life wheel, 7 of these really important roles. And then you're doing your planning and you've got 2 big rocks for every role. I hope you're seeing pretty quickly that there's a risk to having 14 big rocks in your calendar. Because I, in my whole life, have never gotten 14 big rocks done in a week. These aren't just another appointment. What you're saying when you put a big rock on your calendar is, these roles here in my life wheel, these are the most important roles in my life. And this big rock, that's the most important thing I can do in my most important role. So you are saying, in essence, that there is nothing more important that you could do at that time than the big rock you identified. And doing that 14 times in a week, well, maybe not you. If I try and do that 14 times in a week, I'm setting myself up for failure. If you can get 14 big rocks done in a week, go do it. I'm like eking out 6 if I'm lucky, right? Because you are going to have unexpected things. You're going to have emergencies come up. You're going to be tired, right? You're going to not feel like doing it. In fact, what will likely happen is, I'll stop sharing really quickly so I can see everyone. So what will likely happen is you'll have that big rock in your calendar, and the appointment reminder will pop up on your phone or it will pop up on your computer. And what you'll do, what you'll be inclined to do, is the same thing I'm inclined to do. And that is to hit snooze 9 times, right? Until that appointment time is gone, right? I mean, this is where the rubber hits the road for the entire 5 choices, is in that moment when that reminder pops up and you choose to either do it or not do it. Everything to this point is meaningless if you hit snooze 9 times through your appointment, right? So this is where I think the conversation gets really compelling. And in fact, we're going to go into a breakout session to discuss this, because we have to have a way in that moment to stick to the big rocks. And that does take discipline. Now, we just got some really great ideas from Gabriella and from Samira. I hope, am I pronouncing that correctly?
You got it, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Samira. There's 2 questions that when I put you into a breakout room, you're going to be answering these with a few people. I just put them in the chat. So what are your thoughts and ideas for increasing discipline in the moment? Or phrased another way, how do we stay committed to our big rocks when we're tired, when we're overwhelmed, when we're fighting something urgent coming at us, when your boss has just walked in and asked for 4 things at the same time, right? How do you really stay committed? So a breakout room means that you're going to be in a very small room with 3 or 4 other people. And you can come off of, you can put your camera on, put your camera on so that they can see you, come off of mute, and you're going to answer these questions together. And I'm going to give you 4 minutes. So you get to network, meet a few people. You might exchange emails in your chat there. No one else can see what you're doing there. No one else can hear you. It's just a little pod. And then I'll give you a 1-minute warning when I'm going to pull you back together. It'll pop up and say you've got 60 seconds. You can just close that window and we'll all come flooding back in 60 seconds. Okay, so that's the big explanation of what we're doing. And again, 3 or 4 other people. You have to accept it when I create the room, but off you go. You've got 4 minutes with your new friends. Okay, as we have everyone kind of flooding in. Welcome back, everybody. I know that's like an abrupt, here you are, here we are all together. Oh, look, I have more people on camera too. I love the camera. Okay, so I'll be very interested if anyone would be willing to share some of the ideas or tips or tricks or thoughts that you had around this idea of discipline. What came up in your breakout sessions?
Yeah, so I'm Trini, hi. So we had 3 members in our breakout session, so we had great insights. One being delegating. My breakout member, she had this great point about delegating it. If we are not able to do it that day, something urgent comes up. For example, at work, if there is a mail that they send it to me, but I'm unable to do it because I'm occupied with some work, probably delegate it.
Yes.
And then Roshia said that even if Roshia is there, she can just say it out too. She had another very good point too. And I personally said that probably if I'm unable to do it this week, probably I'll move it to the next week, and set it as a priority for the next week and make sure I do it. And then Roshia's point was thinking about the intention behind that goal or a role, that why I wanted to do that or why I wanted that role. And that kind of an intention will bring that drive within to do that particular, task.
Well said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Raveni. I think sometimes delegation is one where we will have a negative impression of it, like, oh, I don't want to do it, so I don't. But actually, if we change our mindset about delegation, right? Sometimes delegation is giving another person an opportunity to learn a new skill or to engage in a way that they haven't. And of course, you'll want an open dialogue about that, but it's really appropriate to delegate in some situations.
Jolene's idea it is. It's a great point, Jolene.
Thank you. Thanks, Jillian. Thank you. Okay, so what else would you add? What other things did you come up with in your breakout session? How do we stick with our big rocks in the moment?
One thing that, my name is Liza and I'm in Chicago, Illinois.
Hi,
one of the things that I brought up was the law of physics of something in motion stays in motion until something stops it. And so one of the reasons why big rocks are so hard is because they're big and they're these big tasks that you don't necessarily know where to start. And so picking something easy to start with of that big rock, so it gives you that small win to then keep on going.
So good.
That's really important to me. And then also knowing the energy arc of your day. If you know at 3 p.m. that is when you have the lowest amount of energy, scheduling a big rock at 3 p.m., you're not setting yourself up for success. And so if you know that your peak energy at work is between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., that's when your big rocks have to be.
Yes. So good. Thank you, Liza. You know, that first one where you're saying, you know, maybe it's just one little thing that you need to commit to that will tip you into a big rock. Or if your big rock is overwhelming, break it into steps. Maybe your big rock isn't, you know, spending 3 hours researching, it's doing 10 minutes of research this week, right? Because 10 minutes of research is better than 0, right? So sometimes just breaking it into bite-sized pieces, or sometimes, just to Liza's point, for me, I know I've got this big rock, say I love to run, so maybe it's going for a run, but I don't always feel like running. So I tell myself, well, you don't have to go for a run, but you do have to put your running clothes on, right? Like I'll want to back myself out and I'll say, no. You know, you can opt out of the run, but you have to have your running shoes on when you opt out. And it's funny because there are some days where it's like, well, I'm in the running shoes, I'm going to go. Other days I have to say, okay, look, you don't have to go for a run, but you do have to go stand out on the porch. Right? And then I'll say, okay, once I'm out there, I'm like, okay, you don't have to go for the full run, but you got to run to the end of the block and back. Right? So it's like these little baby steps into my big rock. And there have been a couple of times where I'll get myself to the porch and I'm like, okay, done. Yep, that's all I'm doing. I'm not doing, you know, that's all. I'm tapping out. But more often, far more often, that's where my run starts, is by putting on my workout clothes. So thank you, Liza. Really great ideas. To another point Liza made, there are so many little things you can do. Know your schedule, right? Know when your energy's highest. Know when your thinking's clearest. You are far more likely to engage in a big rock or to have discipline when your blood sugar is high rather than low, right? When you've got even blood sugar. So plan your meals accordingly. You're far more likely to engage in a big rock when you're well rested, right? So there's some physiological things that are important. And then there are some little tricks that matter. So one person, Hafsa, said, share with a friend so you've got an accountability partner. Right? That's a great one. And sometimes it's someone who might have an interest in the same big rock with you. And sometimes it's just a friend where you call and say, hey, I am going to do this week. Ask me if I did it on Sunday, right? So you've got this layer of accountability. One of the things that I do every week is I send my leader, I report to the president of Franklin Covey. I send him an email, and the title of the email is Big Rocks for the week of April 17th, whatever week it is. And then I say, hey, Paul, here's all the stuff I'm focused on, but here are my 2 big rocks for the week. And I'll tell you, it is embarrassing, I know it firsthand, to have to send the same big rocks the next week. So there's this layer of accountability that I've created by telling my leader I'm going to do these things. So there are ways you can really get yourself to engage in big rocks. And then the one that, let me share just this one more thought on this, has had the biggest impact for me is what Travani actually said. If you remember why, or maybe it was Rochelle that mentioned it in that group, why you put that big rock on your calendar in the first place, right? It is the most important thing you can do in your most important role. So there's a reason it's there. And the more clear that vision of extraordinary is, the easier it is to draw on that vision in the moment. So if you will, again, indulge me for a very specific example, back to the running example. In my role as an athlete, that's what I call my running role as an athlete, I have this Q2 role statement that says that I will accomplish these things through, and then the activity is maniacal commitment to my workouts. That's my wording. I'm going to have maniacal commitment to my workouts. Well, what happens is I schedule my running for 5 a.m. and I am not one of those morning people that some of you are. That is not me. So the alarm goes off at 5 or 5:30 and I will be trying to backpedal out of my run, right? I'll think, well, maybe as an athlete, I need my sleep more than a run, right? Like that's the way I'm like tiptoeing out of my big rock. And then I catch myself and I think, I'm an athlete. Athletes don't sleep in. Athletes get out of bed and they go for a run. And if I say to myself, I'm an athlete and I have maniacal commitment to my workouts, then hitting snooze 9 times gets really hard. But it's because I have that really clear vision of extraordinary that I can in the moment draw on it. So I would say, again, I mentioned this in one of the earlier sessions, some of the most important work you will ever do is to sit down for an hour and get really clear on what extraordinary looks like, because that all of a sudden becomes your anchor. It becomes your compass in a moment when you want to hit snooze a bunch of times. Does that sound good? Okay, so draw on the strength of the vision that you have for extraordinary. Okay, I know we're coming up on time. There's one other thing I want to talk about before we wrap up. And that is the role of technology in either hindering or accelerating our ability to reach extraordinary, our ability to accomplish our big rocks. We know that our technology can be this amazing thing that propels us forward in our most important roles, our most important activities. It can also be the thing that stops you from doing those, right? As you scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. Again, this is firsthand experience I'm talking from here. Now, what we know about your technology, we don't have the one size fits all. We're not saying, here's the apps or the tools or how you should approach it or the boundaries that you should have. What we are saying is you better have some boundaries. No one will create your boundaries for you. And leaving your technology boundaryless is a huge risk in accomplishing your most important things. So let's do this. In the chat or in, let me share my screen so you can see the questions. Or again, I love hearing your voices, so you're welcome to come off. There are 2 questions. The first is, what are your boundaries? If you have boundaries, so for example, this might look like, I put my phone away at 10 p.m. Don't pick it up until morning. Or we don't use technology at the dinner table kind of thing, right? So if you have boundaries, go ahead and chat those in. But if your answer when I asked that was, oh, I don't have any, dig deep into your imagination and come up with at least one boundary that would benefit you, right? That would be useful for you to adopt. So either off of mute or in the chat, let's talk boundaries. What are they? What should they be? Okay, good ones.
Hi, this is Jolene.
Hi, Jolene.
So one boundary with technology is sometime if I have a deadline at work, I would leave my phone in the car. I will let my family know, hey, I'm not gonna have my phone today. If you need to reach me, you'll have to call the office and ask for me. But people, my husband or my kid will text me during the day and that's distracting. So I will let them know in advance, I'm not gonna be available. And I leave my phone in the car. So if friends or family members or, those group chats that you are part of, you get, sucked into them. So,
so much.
If it's in the car, it's away from, my office, then I know not to respond and, I'll get back to it later on.
It's amazing. And I think one of the important parts, but what you just said, is your communication with others to say, hey, I'm not going to have this. It's interesting how many of us are unwilling to let go of technology, create strong boundaries with the excuse of, well, if there's an emergency. Now, some of you, that's a real thing, right? Like you have to be based on a loved one's health or other. Most of us, I think it's a bit of an excuse, right? You could just be a little less in contact. Those of us that are from an analog childhood, it's okay. Like, it's okay if you're just unplugged for a little bit. So thank you, Jolene. That's a great one. Let me give you a moment to scroll through some of the other boundaries that we see over here in the chat. There are some really good ones coming in. So really good ones. I love this. You know, just an hour before bed, Carmen, there is so much research around that you will sleep more restfully if you do not have screen light going in your eyeballs for an hour before sleep. But how many of us, again, personal experience, that's the last thing I'm doing. Giovanni. Oh, Alyssa.
Lena, I don't know if you saw the one that said that they had their fiance that has their password to Facebook or to social media, and so in order to log in, they have to, like a child, they have to let them. I think that's brilliant.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Because this is not a willpower thing, right? It's not that we're weak and unable to hold boundaries. This is how our brains are wired, right? And can we just acknowledge that in COVID times, this is really tough. Like, this is hard. Like, we're stressed out, we're maxed out, we're juggling 100 things. And sometimes you just want to sit down and scroll. And guess what? That's fine, right? It's fine. And there is an opportunity cost every moment. So having a few little boundaries that you can enact can make all the difference as we're working towards extraordinary. Okay, I know we're coming up on time. You're going to want to probably take a few little notes on the boundaries that you're seeing. And based on this last hour, we're going to end this the same way we have at the other sessions, without hitting enter in the chat. So you're going to go over to the chat and you're going to answer this question, but don't hit enter. If you do, it's okay, but don't hit enter yet. Let me come. This is the question you're answering. What is one action that you can commit to taking based on this session? It might be a little one. You might say, tonight, I'm not going to look at my screen for 1 hour before bed. That's fine. Whatever that action is, but I want you to commit to one thing. Don't hit enter yet. Let me give you a moment to, or you can. It's okay if you do. But if you haven't hit enter, just hold off. What I love is when we all flood in this whole line of commitments out of this session can be really rewarding. So just 10 more seconds. Okay, let's hit enter. Let's see what everyone's going to do based on this session. I love it. I'm telling you, writing down your big rocks, if you just do that, schedule them if you can, but just identify every week. What's the most important thing? What are the 5 most important things? Yeah, it's really great. Okay. Oh, I love it, Quinn. The gift for your mom's day. That wonderful. That's a big rock. It's wonderful. Okay, as you finish reading those, I know I've brought us right up to time, Melissa, so forgive me for that. But before we close, again, this has been such a special day for me, and getting to see some of you repeatedly throughout the day, it's been really special for me as well. So thank you for investing your time. Thanks for choosing to be with me. I hope it's been useful. Let me put my email up so that you can connect with me if it's, love to catch up with you. So thanks so much, Alyssa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lena. And it's been a special day for us too. I think you've just given everybody so many wonderful things to think about. I love the learning and the conversation going back and forth between the participants, and it takes a special community to pull this off. So really happy to have all of these women, and I believe we've had a man joining us for most of our sessions today. I'm sure he's going to be our next male ally. So thanks everyone for being here. And just a reminder that we'll have more webinars next week, and there will be an email that'll come out toward the end of the week, and kind of fortuitously, it mirrors the last box there around fueling your fire and not burning out. And so our theme next week is self-care, and how you can kind of have some attention focused on you, not always on how you can improve and be better, but how you can just relax in the moment and enjoy what you're experiencing. And so that's the theme next week. So look for that sign up coming, closer to the end of the week. But again, thanks to Lena Renee, thanks to Franklin Covey for agreeing to do this with us. We're so appreciative of you sharing these amazing insights. And that'll conclude our webinar for today. So thanks again, and everybody have a good weekend, and give a hug to your mom.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.